Welcome back to part 3, 1949 Dumont Stratford model RA105. Before I begin to change the paper caps and the electrolytics, I do want to check the power transformer. Previously I did check the resistance on the transformer and all checked good, but we're going to put some voltage to it this morning and just confirm that we're getting the voltages that we should be getting. Here's a schematic of the power transformer and the rectifiers. And I pulled both of the 5U4 rectifiers out of the circuit, and all we're looking for here is just approximately 600 to 700 volts on pins 4 and 6. That'll confirm that the transformer is putting out voltage. Now the primary is wired through the switch, which goes through that one of those 6-pin plugs that plugs into the Flyback Power supply. But we're going to bypass that by just putting AC here and here. Now let's see what we get. Here's pins 4 and 6 on one of those rectifier tubes. So let's see if we're producing any AC voltage. And looks like we are. Not drawing any excessive current. Let's go on up to about 100 volts. And we're drawing 0.6 of an amp. So we do have 700 volts AC on the secondary of the power transformer, and we got one dial lamp burning. That other one's burnt out, I guess, and we have some tubes lighting up. It would really be tempting to pop in those 5U4s and just to see what happens. Tell you what I might do. I might check the electrolytics. If those caps are reading anything at all, we might put the rectifier tubes in and just control it with the power right, because it's fused, and if anything happens it'll blow the fuse on it. Just bring up some voltage on the AC and just see if we're producing any DC at all. There's 6 electrolytic filter caps, 3 here and 3 up here, and all of them are reading some capacitance. Like that one's 120 mic, 125. Here's 48 mic. 40. Really tempted to go ahead and plug those rectifier tubes in. Now I will have to plug in the Flyback Power supply for these electrolytics to be in the circuit. The way this is wired, you have to have it plugged in. And that's where this relay comes in too. It has to key on, make contact for these filter caps to become active. I think we're safe in attempting that because the power right, it has a fuse in it, and if we get any kind of overload, it'll trip out. Alright, both 5U4s put in. Flyback power supply plugged into the main chassis. I've unhooked the cap on the horizontal output tube, so prevent anything from trying to work in that area. So let's just see if we can produce any DC. And how about that? quite a bit of AC leakage, but we have approximately 275 or so, 270 DC, and drawing less than an amp of current. Well, none of those caps are getting hot, so I'm going to leave this on just a few minutes. Well, my battery was running down on the meter I had hooked up, so I hooked up a different meter. Maybe they are reforming. Up 300 volts DC, 19 volts of leakage, so I believe it's getting better. I'm going to need this yoke to put on my test tube. This yoke has to be in the circuit for the set to eventually come on. So it's pretty easy to take out. 3 machine bolts, 3 nuts with washers. Taking all of them out. And the ion trap, just loosened it, pull it off, and I think the yoke will come out. Noticed on this rubber gasket, it's turned hard and it's cracked. So really got to be careful in pulling it off and putting it back on this tube, because it fits tight around this base. So I have my test picture tube hooked up with the original yoke. No high voltage whatsoever. Good news is all the tubes are lighting up. Power transformer's okay. You know, we're producing some B+ voltages on the rectifier tubes. So I think the plan now is we're going to recap that flyback power supply. A good portion of the horizontal is in that chassis, so we're going to change the caps in it. Of course, check the resistors, and then we're going to hook it back up and see if it produces any kind of high voltage. I think the main chassis is working well enough to where we should get some high voltage, but we'll see. Okay, before I change the caps, I'm going to attempt to measure the resistance on this transformer on the flyback. It looks perfectly fine, but just to be sure before I get too heavy into this, let's check these resistances on the primary and the secondary. And one thing I did notice on this schematic that I have, they're showing a 1/4 amp fuse here to pin 8, the damper tube, back to the linearity coil. I do not see a 1/4 amp fuse. We do have resistance from here to here, but I think it's just a straight wire. I see no fuse. So time to change some paper caps, and hopefully that'll make this circuit work. Fortunately, this Dumont service manual does have a good picture of this flyback power supply. This is resistors and capacitors on this one view. So that's going to be pretty simple. We'll check the resistors while we're in there too, because they've got most of them labeled. Look like all of them, maybe, hopefully. Yeah, making a little progress. I've changed 3 caps and a 47 ohm resistor. See that new one down in there in the bottom, and I'm checking the resistors as I go. Those 2 small ones right there were okay. This large one right here, that's supposed to be 180K, reading almost a half a meg. So I think I need to change that one too. Have no high voltage whatsoever. However, I'm thinking that that horizontal output tube is so weak, that's what's causing that. Hope so. We got some caps just temporarily tacked in over here on it just to see if we can get some high voltage, but still nothing there. We have radio. This is audio circuit up in here. And I haven't, as you can see, those are still all original caps. So I hope that transformer is okay. According to the resistance checks, it's okay. And I do have a flyback and yoke tester. And the flyback is ringing like it's good, so we'll see. Hopefully it's just a bad tube. Update. After changing all the paper caps in this high voltage flyback power supply, I keep calling it high voltage, but that's really what it is. Still wasn't able to get any high voltage. That yellow cap and that brown one, those are just tacked in temporarily because I'm waiting on some 1000-volt caps to put in there. Those are some 600s. And they'll work temporarily until I get the 1000s. But anyway, could not get any high voltage no matter what I did. Really couldn't check these doorknob caps, but I was hoping that they were all okay. Get a substantial arc on the cap of the horizontal output tube. So I knew something was trying to happen. And then I checked drive on the horizontal output tube, and I had horizontal drive voltage. But if you'll remember, when I checked the tubes, I mentioned that the original 6BG6 horizontal output checked weak. And you can see it says replace. Well, that was my problem. I ordered a new 6BG6, and now I've got 10,000 volts. That can probably be adjusted. It does have a horizontal drive adjustment right there, but we've got some TV action going on now. Now, yeah, it's out of sync and picture's pulled down, but hopefully when we replace some paper caps on the main chassis, that'll help that situation. Really strange on this tube. That time, see, it's checking, but it's fluctuating, so I know it's bad. And I just noticed that the short neon's coming on too on the right hand side there. So we got a bad tube. That was what was causing no high voltage. Really glad, because I was suspicioning the doorknob caps, high voltage transformer, all types of bad things. Here's the electrolytic. It's 270 mics, 175 volt. One on this end and one on this end. And it mounted right here. You see the two clips where it was mounted, so I'll be restuffing that, get it cleaned up. Also waiting on caps to do that with. I'm just going to put some 82s in it. Once I get those caps in, I'll change those two that I have temporarily tacked in, and I'll restuff that double section electrolytic. Then we'll tackle the main chassis, see if we can figure out the sync problem, the vertical problem, the height problem, all of those things. I wanted to show you just real quickly how I knew I had horizontal drive coming out of the main chassis. Just wasn't producing any high voltage before I changed that output tube. If you look here on pin 5, the horizontal sweep it's called, I call it the output tube. This little meter I have also has a scope on it. With the scope, I'm going to go to auto trigger, and there's our horizontal waveform. And if you're looking right in the corner, it says 15.7 kilohertz. I wouldn't rely on this little scope function on this meter for intricate or detailed scope measurements, but for the horizontal drive signal, that's pretty impressive that this little $60 meter with a scope function on it, that told me that I do have horizontal drive on that tube. And there's what the waveform should look like. So pretty impressive for a really inexpensive multimeter with a scope function on it. Thanks for watching part 3. See you next time. We hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, hit the like button, and we'd love it if you would subscribe to our channel. Thanks.